Hello, everybody, and welcome to Health Confidential with Simone Gisondi, the podcast where the secrets of the body meet the mysteries of healing. Each week, I explore the powerful world of holistic medicine, blending ancient wisdom and cutting edge science, conventional insight, and unconventional truths to decode some of the toughest cases and the most misunderstood conditions. I'm a certified holistic cancer therapies practitioner, a registered holistic nutritionist, and certified regenerative detoxification specialist. I am not a medical doctor. This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. The diagnosis and therapies discussed here may not be right for you. Please consult a qualified healthcare medical provider before making changes to your health. To learn more about my work or to experience the power of the custom-made healing protocols that I develop, designed specifically for your unique body, your unique biochemistry, your history, and your internal terrain, visit simonegisondi.com and book a private consultation with me. And if this episode speaks to you, follow me on Instagram at simone.gisondi and share this episode with someone you love. Thank you for listening, and welcome to today's episode of Health Confidential.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Health Confidential. I want to say right off the bat, this is not a motivational story today. I know you guys probably think it is, looking at the title of the show, but it's not a motivational story, and you'll see why. I want to start off also by saying that most people are taught that addiction is about substance and about discipline and willpower. But when you look closely, you see that there are actual patterns that emerge and that appear. And I've seen this in my work, in my health work with my clients. Some people, when it comes especially to substances like alcohol, some people stop drinking, but still feel addicted. Others change something much deeper. And this is what the show is going to be all about, and we'll show you. And when that deeper thing changes, the addiction dissolves. So today's conversation with my guest, who you will absolutely love because he's so wise, is not about sobriety as a behavior. It's actually about recovery as an identity shift, and what actually changes in the brain and the nervous system and in the sense of the self that leaves the addiction with really nothing to do anymore. So it just dissolves. So my guest that I said to you, I will introduce you to you guys. He is actually someone who lived addiction from the inside, built a life at the highest levels of the music industry. And most of us actually look at the music industry from the outside, so he could speak to that, and eventually healed alcoholism, but not through force. This is what I love about his story, but through other things like identity change, embodied practice, a shift in his mindset, and neuroplasticity, which he will speak about. It's an investigation into why recovery works for some people so well, while for others it doesn't. So now on to the guest. He is a record label owner and a rock musician of the highest level. His name is Andrew Spaulding, and he is the founder and creative force behind Corpse Paint Records, a boutique heavy metal music label that's rooted in authenticity. And you will see how much authenticity, because of who he is and how he shows up. It's rooted in intention and in lived experience. And what's more authentic than that? And his journey with music began very early on. It was shaped by his family, by discovery, and by obsession. And it actually evolved from being a lifelong fan himself, to the touring crew, an industry insider, and ultimately the label owner and also the executive producer. So he is a multi-talented individual. Over the years, Andrew actually worked closely with influential artists that he could maybe touch on, and even bands across punk, hardcore, and metal music, experiencing the industry from the ground up. That path, along with personal battles, sobriety, and deep inner work, reshaped his relationship with creativity. And he'll show you how. And we all know that in the music industry, it was all about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Music became more than sound to him. It became alignment, frequency, and truth. So in 2021, he founded Corpse Paint Records to create the kind of releases that he always believed should exist artist driven, intentional, and uncompromising. And his most ambitious realization of that vision is Sun Don't Shine. And I have it right here in my hands because I am special enough that I got my hands on it. And this is a heavy metal supergroup that he personally conceptualized and assembled, uniting members of Type O negative, Crowbar, and Down, for those of you that are in the industry and know about those specific groups. So he serves as executive producer and architect of this project, overseeing everything from the songwriting to the visual storytelling to the release strategy and the long form narrative of it all. So today, Andrew operates at the intersection of music, of manifestation, and he's got some crazy manifestation stories that I was privy enough to hear, and also at the intersection of meaning, believing that authenticity is literally the highest vibration and that art, when it's created with honesty at the forefront, has the power to heal, to awaken, and to endure. So everything he builds, which is, of course, records, visuals, stories through his art, is guided by that principle. So please welcome Andrew Spaulding to my show. Andrew, welcome.
Hey, whoa. OMG, man, that was so sweet. That was nice. I didn't know I could do all those things.
I
That's amazing.
know. I know. No,
Holy
you can.
cow.
You can. You are a one of the most multi-talented individuals, and it's you know what? Most of the time we see people as very one-dimensional. We think of them as musicians, so we just kind of project that identity onto them. But because I know you better, I've gotten to know you better when we attended an event together. I saw many different facets of you as a obviously not only as a musician but also as a
Hmm.
person, as an individual, as a human. So before we talk about what worked for you, because obviously this is the core theme of the show, um, take us back to when you started, when the addiction started. Touch on
Oh,
what was it that actually uh, gave birth to that addiction.
okay. I would say I was born with it. It was definitely
Mm,
genetic,
mm.
but it was also celebrated. So it was already there, and I grew up in an environment to where it was celebrated, not necessarily abused in a sense to where there was a family abuse about it. But my father drank beer like the average father, right? There was beer in the refrigerator, but he wouldn't come home drunk or anything like that. It was just being in the culture. So at a young age, my parents got divorced, and so I think that's what led me towards addiction
Mm.
was never being able to get on the side of abandonment and learning at a young age that divorce was an unconscious programming of abandonment instead of ever sitting with those feelings. I used alcohol my whole life to facilitate suffering, because I couldn't really understand that pain that I was experiencing that was more in the lines of generational trauma versus of even the own trauma that I've caused in my life. Of course I've caused trauma. I've done things wrong I'm not going to do again, and that I learned from and gained wisdom from. But it's a little. It was deeper than that. It was definitely in my DNA.
So,
And go ahead.
so Andrew, in that regard, just based on what you're saying, do you see addiction more as a flaw, or was it more of an intelligent adaptation for you?
That's great. Addiction is not a problem to the user. It's a solution.
Yeah.
I'm very solution oriented person. So it was a solution. I wasn't conscious enough of the dangers behind it. I
Yep.
was aware of the stereotype dangers of it that we're presented with, of that we see. But until you start to experience them, it's kind of like having kids. Everyone can tell you what having a kid is alike, but until you do, there's really no good words. Nobody can prepare you. And so when you realize you're an alcoholic, there's really no good way to prepare yourself because you've been lying to yourself the whole time before you finally turn that corner and accept it.
Yeah.
That's a tough, that could be a tough day.
Yeah, because I see this in my work in health. So not just addiction. And I've studied, I mean, Dr. Gabor Mate talked at length about addiction and its underlying framework. But the behavior itself does look destructive, especially because we've been conditioned to believe so. However, if you look at it at biological level, and I'm obsessed with the biological aspect of things, it's often, I think, the body just trying to regulate something that just doesn't know how to regulate any other way, especially in younger years when we're young.
Sure.
And that's the way that it knows how to do. But who, if we're gonna go a step further in that, who were you being, if you can think back on it? So not step away from the doing, instead of what were you doing, rather who were you being during the years that you were drinking, that you could summarize.
Um, Essentially an escape artist. Um, escape,
Escape. Hmm.
escaping of what was that I was turning, that was inside of me, that needed healing. That was I was expressing, suppressing through alcohol, and then when the alcohol turned dark, like that's when you start to know when you're an alcoholic, is when it's no longer fun, right? When it's no longer having beers with the buddies. It's Wednesday night and you're blacked out in the parking lot, bawling your eyes out, howling at the moon, being a victim of your life. And you're like,
Yes.
whoa, what happened here? This is not the rock and roll party, up all night, sleep all day. This is like, oh shit, what's going on in this world of mine that I've ignored my whole life and suppressed? And then mixing that with alcohol can be, a toxic situation for a lot of folks. Uh, so yes, it was definitely a escape artist coping mechanism. It was me suppressing. It was medicine. It was a way for me to escape and go on and ignore and pacify and get onto another day, and wake up and go to work and have the mind focus on the job and the work. And then here comes those feelings. I'll have a beer, I'll suppress it, and then, you know then it's decades of that can be,
Yeah.
is dangerous. And but you don't really see it when you've been doing it for long. And and I lived in environments where it was celebrated. I worked in the music industry for quite a while. When I
Yeah.
wasn't in the music industry, I worked in the restaurant industry. And then I also lived in New Orleans. All recipes for alcoholism. The bars don't close in rock and roll, and in New Orleans, and in restaurant work. Drugs and alcohol are just rampant in that type of industry life. So I was always around it. I never really thought I was one because I was never spent enough time in environment outside of it to go, oh, you mean there's not other people that, oh, you mean
Yeah.
life
Yeah.
happens
Yeah.
outside of this?
Yeah, and I think for me, when I look at it, I think this is where the recovery models get it so wrong, because they don't ever go deep enough. They focus on behavior modification instead of asking, who does this person believe they are, that they need to try to escape that version of themselves? And of course, there's so much literature out there. There's been so much research done, because on the whole idea that the body actually listens to identity far more than anything else, than instructions, than behavior, and behavior is driven by the identity. So that's why I wanted to know, who did you think you were at that time, and what you were trying to escape from who you were, because it was
Yeah,
it was hurting
I
too
was
much.
lost.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I didn't know who I was. I had no idea that there was this. I didn't know, to answer it truthfully. That's why I felt I was an escape artist, because I was escaping from my higher self, my real identity, my ego, the alcoholic, and my spirit were like, "Hey, no, we can't live in the same place anymore. One of us is gonna have to go." And I didn't realize that's what happened, because I didn't know. I was living off my ego, off my senses, numbing myself. And then I got habit in the alcoholism,
Yeah.
numbing, and then I just wasn't feeling anything other than the beer and the booze, and until the pain, which you couldn't control then anymore because the floodgates are open, and then all those things that you stuffed down
Yeah.
has to come out, and then it started to come out, and then I realized, there's gonna in that in that transition, this could go one of two ways. It's either going to go good and I'm going to stop drinking, or it's going to
Mm.
go a destructive path.
Yeah, because I think that telling someone to just stop drinking, which is often what a lot of people
Right.
expect to be the solution to it, and it almost always backfires. I mean, that's why
Yes.
addiction even exists, because if it was that easy, everybody would just do it and everybody would be healed. So addiction isn't a failure of discipline per se. It's more going back to the biology perspective. It's a body that learned regulation through chemistry because it
Yes.
never learned it through safety. So when you
Correct.
started changing your inner state and when you came face to face with this idea of, man, I'm trying to escape, I'm an escape artist, what shifted first in you? What would you say? Was it your emotions, your identity, cravings at the physical level? Take us back to that.
It was feeling like I did as a kid when I knew I
Mm,
shouldn't feel that way.
okay.
When I started to see those behaviors in my father that made me feel insecure as a kid show up in me. And so I didn't want to teach that to my kids. So how do you do that? You can't do it. And so I would realize alcohol wasn't going to give me that opportunity. Alcohol was not going to allow me to be my best self. It was going to make me out of control. And my kids were super young, and getting the daddy juice eventually joke was going to turn into a realization of, oh, dad's got a problem. Dad's not just having a couple of beers. Dad's an alcoholic. And I didn't want them to get to an age to where they could start to make that conclusion. I didn't think that would be fair. I didn't want them to grow up with that.
So were you functional, Andrew? Were you a
Oh
functional
yeah,
alcoholic? You were able to.
totally.
Okay, okay.
full on full on functional. And I literally had enough one day. I woke up one morning, there wasn't any big event, and so having hindsight and understanding now, I had a divine awakening. I woke
Ah,
up one day and said, I'm not going to drink, and my spirit overrode my 3D avatar long enough to give me the opportunity to get on the other side of the addiction, to see what my life could be like. And I
ah,
haven't gone
I
and I
told you
haven't gone
guys.
back.
Yeah, I told you that there's like this guy is so multidimensional because I know that oftentimes we think of rock stars and people in the music industry as just like one dimensional. They're just all about the music and what comes with it and the environment of the sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And here you are, you had this divine intervention, so to speak, because that was going to be my next question. What was the catalyst to that? What was it that one day you just said, you know what, like I've had enough of this. I can't do this anymore. It doesn't feel fun. It's not good. It's not serving me. I feel guilty. Was it sort of your, like you said, your spirit or your consciousness that just came to say, this doesn't feel good? And you constantly felt that you actually decided that you need to stop that emotional rehearsal and the need to drink. And you decided to just take on a different practice because I think that there's so much that people misunderstand about it, and there's such a huge danger in trying to think your way out of it as being the solution to addiction. So in that regard, there was that divine intervention, but did you involve your body in it or just your mind, your emotions? Walk us through what you did from there.
I literally woke up one day, and of course, as we've heard Dr. Joe say many times, you'll remember the day you make a change. And I remember the day, the moment. There was no big event that happened. I just said I woke up, I had to go to work, and I was like, I'm not going to drink today. When I come home, I put that in my head. I didn't unconsciously realize I was programming myself, but I was like, I'm not going to drink. And why? I challenged myself because I realized I would say that in my head
Mm-hmm.
often and I wouldn't do it. And then I would excuse that voice. And then finally that voice wouldn't stop wanting to be excused. That voice said, "You can't do it." And I was like, "Oh, are you challenging me?" And it's like, "Yes." And I'm like, "So you're going to tell me you can't go one day without drinking?" And I was like, "Oh my God, you can't go one day without drinking." And I was like, "Oh." And I was like, "Okay, all right, I'm going to go one day. I'm going to go one day without drinking." And so I literally did the one day at a time. And then I was like, "Well, that was easier than I thought." Because I didn't put a mountain in front of me. I was like, I'm just gonna go one day. I'm just gonna go tonight. I'm coming home from work. I'm not gonna drink, and I'm gonna see how I get up and I feel in the morning. I'm gonna give myself a chance. I never do this. I have the same predictable life every day when I come home from work. As soon as I open
Yeah.
that beer, I live the same existence. I'm not gonna do it. What am I gonna do? I didn't think about what I was gonna do when I got home, other than I knew I wasn't going to drink. That's
Ah,
that's what I was going to do, is not drink alcohol. Anything else was irrelevant. So I think that was good because I wasn't worried about what I was doing because my focus became on not drinking. I was like,
yeah.
whatever it is, I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to fall victim to the voice that's like, hey, everybody deserves a break. I was like, nope, 24 hours, one day, shut up. You're out, locked up. You can come peek at me and I'll wave at you in the window, but I'm not doing it. 24 hours, you're not going to do it today. I've had enough beers. Beers are in enough supply. So, um, that was it. And then that led into two. And then day three was hard. I had a struggle on day three.
Oh,
Um, and I didn't relapse, but I got met with the darkness and sober. And I had that sadness come up for the first time. Where day one and day two were kind of like an euphoric challenge of like feeling good, like you did something new, and you're like, okay, this is kind of cool. Like maybe I can not drink on a Wednesday. That's a good idea. Save a little bit of money. I don't feel like shit this morning. No hangover. Like a little lighter in the step.
mm-hmm.
All the things that that come with it, and you're like, okay, cool. Let me dial this up for a little while. But day three was hard, and I was like, okay, just get through it. And I got through day three, and then I just said, well, let me go a week. Let me go a week. When's the last time you got? You're 40 something years old. When's the last time you got a week without drinking? And that week turned into a month. And then I was like, I'm not going to drink anymore. I was like, I'm just going to stop. I'm going to stop until I feel like I've got it under control. Uh,
Okay. Okay. So it feels like it was decision. You made a decision that no, I'm not going to do this anymore. And of course, staying very conscious. And for those of you that don't know, when he referred to Dr. Joe, he's referring to Dr. Joe Dispenza, who is, and you can go and do research on him, but he is the one that has brought so much to the forefront about how when we make decisions and we remain conscious and try to dissolve through meditation, especially, and involving the body, try to dissolve the addiction to the chemicals that have us tied to a past that has not served us. So, in that regard, Andrew, it sounds like you just made the decision and you stayed conscious to say, "I'm not going to drink on a Wednesday," because oftentimes a lot of people, especially those who are addicted, you just kind of do it on autopilot. You
yeah,
just go through the motions, much like what you were saying. You wake up and you go through the same motions. And Dr. Joe Dispenza does speak about that. You wake up, you get up off the bed on the same side of the bed, you pick up your phone, you check your social media, and then you go to the bathroom, you brush your teeth, you come, you put on the coffee. So we go through these loops that are on repeat. So I wanted to know, to go a little bit deeper, when did you know you weren't, let's say, a recovering alcoholic anymore, but you were rather free, like you had changed something in your sense of self? And then, and I'm so fascinated by this, because I've sat with it for myself. I have different addictions of my own. I'm addicted to
sure.
working out and so on and so forth, which society deems as being very acceptable People should be
Yeah.
applauded for that.
Addictions, right?
That's right. But if addiction dissolves at the level of identity, does something else replace it, Andrew? That
Hmm.
I'm so curious about how that was for you in your experience.
Mm. You know, so that's pretty heavy.
Yeah, because I often wonder about myself. I know that when you have a substance, there's something. It's a thing that actually you interface with, right? So
Yeah.
it's like you have to break your addiction. I know that people who smoke, for example, it's like they have that, no, I have to like reach for it with my hand and put it in my mouth and light it up. And so there's like a ritualistic thing with a
Right.
physical thing that you kind of interface with. But when it comes to self, when it comes to identity, that is non-tangible. So it's
Mm.
so much deeper. So I just think if
I'd like to take a quick break now to let you know that today's show is sponsored by my book, Against Medical Advice. This book is a memoir, and it tells the story of how I built my life back after suffering a stroke during my divorce. I discuss the nutritional, lifestyle, and mindset aspects that I put into practice to regain my health and rebuild my life. The book has been a labor of love, both writing it and publishing it, and I couldn't be more proud of it. Please pick up your copy from Amazon. For your very own signed copy, my email address is simone@simonegisondi.com. Oh, and I'd really appreciate it if you'd please consider leaving a review once you've read the book. And now, back to the
think
show.
if addiction dissolves at the level of identity, especially when that identity interfaces with a thing, with a tangible thing, what replaces it? And can that tangible thing be replaced by something non-tangible like freedom, like
Yeah.
a
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
feeling? Or
Sure.
does it have to be something else? Like, did you, let's say, shift all of that towards your creativity with your music, and you went on to an amazing level of success through your record label and all of that? So that's why when I was thinking about you and I was trying to structure our interview before we got started, I'm like, what changed there?
A lot. Those are all great points because I experienced a little bit of all those. Um, So to unpack it, I'll start at the end and then go to the beginning. When scientifically, I felt when that change, when that identity corroded, is when I experienced my Kundalini. That day, 8 months after doing this work of hardcore into it, I had a pop Kundalini, and the old version of myself. I saw the switch got flipped. The pill, the red blue pill, all the metaphors,
Mm-hmm.
analogies want to take. The spirit became the alive in the body, and the ego was now secondary. Yeah, I still recognize the ego, and when the ego typically runs the body is when I'm not happy. So that's how I know
Yeah.
if who's running the avatar. So when I'm happy, I know it's my spirit. So I've been able to create discernment, and that really happened to me in the scientific part. I would say is in the Kundalini. Now, baby step that back up to facilitate the time to lead me up to that. I had to shift my energy. What was I filling my time? If I'm not spending 6 to 8 hours a night consuming beers and drinking and bullshitting and hanging out in bar rooms, what am I doing now? I'm now focused on weight loss because now being sober, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like fat. What happened? Like I've been drinking, 4,000 calories a night on top of eating junk. And so, consuming like 7 to 10,000 calories a day sometimes,
Yes. Yeah.
unconsciously for decades. And so now it's built up. So I was able to focus that energy on weight loss. So I was like, okay. So I would come home and I started a little workout routine. I did a 15-minute yoga DVD. I did put more energy into like, hey, I loved music, and you when you were touring, and you had such a great time, and you always wanted to put together a band with Kenny and Kirk. You knew that those guys would make such, and so I gave more time to my passions and to the energies of what I wanted to do and to my children, and then I realized I didn't want to work for anyone else. That, man, clocking in is a soulless thing, and if I'm going to make money,
Yeah.
why can't I make money for myself? And what does that look like? And so I started doing that. So I lost the weight, in about, oh, 3 months or so. I lost 70 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I turned it
Wow. Wow.
on.
Wow.
Yeah, I went for it, and I just immersed myself in weight loss. And I had an app that kind of became a game to where I was counting my calories. So your point of that, that was where my change. I was no longer cracking beers open. I was like, oh, I had 4 cucumbers. Let me log in 4 cucumbers. That's this many calories. I'm allowed,
Yes.
1,200 more today. And then what are my 20 favorite foods that equate 1,200 calories? Okay, I'm going to make a pizza with 1/4 cup cheese with olives. Okay, that's what I'm going to eat. And I love those things. And I would make that so I didn't feel like I was dieting because I love those things already. And I was just making them in friendly portion size and friendly packaging. But I surrendered to it because I was like, what were you doing anyway? You're drinking. And so I started building this momentum. I joined a group on an app that was talking about weight loss, and I would see their struggles. And one thing I felt that was really important that I didn't realize was going with the work is I weighed myself every day at the same time. And I was like, I'm weighing myself every day at the same time because I'm a try. If I can see results, I can buy in. I'm a real buy in type of guy. If I don't see any results,
Yes.
I'm not gonna. You can dangle all the carrots in front of me until I see somebody that's eaten one. I'm gonna be like, no big deal. Um, so I started seeing results. I knew it was working. That gives you confidence. All right.
Of course.
So now I got this weight loss, and I'm no longer 3 months drinking. I got this new, better looking avatar. I'm feeling better on the outside, except the inside is still a wreck, because I lost this weight. And I remember looking at my wife going, I did it. And she was excited for me, but I just felt empty. Like there was no blue ribbon. No, there was nobody there to come give me this trophy. There was no giant pat on the back. There was no
Applause.
parade.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like, yeah, you did it. And I was like, why do I still feel like shit, man? If I'm sober, I've lost the weight. Like these are all things that are supposed to be like good. And like now that on the surface they're here, why aren't they matched up any longer? Why do I still feel horrible? And then in that search, I was listening to a podcast, filling my time of not drinking with artists that inspired me. And one artist mentioned Dr. Joe Dispenza in a podcast. And I just kind of filed it because he didn't go into detail about Dr. Joe. He just mentioned a supernatural event in his life that he couldn't explain. And he used Dr. Joe as a reference as somebody that helped him understand what that supernatural experience was. And then he went
Yes.
on and explained his experience and continued his career. So it kind of triggered me of like, what type of doctor talks about supernatural experiences? That seems kind of cool. I want to get into that.
Yeah, it's an anomaly.
Podcast is over, and I Googled Dr. Joe, and the first clip I saw on Dr. Joe, he said, how do you expect your life to change if you think the same 50 to 60,000 thoughts every day? And human beings think an average of 50 to 60,000 thoughts, and 90, or I forget the exact percentile, but high number percent of them are the same thing. And so you basically go through this thought loop cycle. And yes, I was very aware of my own thought, but I just thought it was coincidences, all those things that we shrug off. And I was like, yeah, no kidding. I'm thinking the same depressing stuff every day. No wonder I'm not happy. I got to think better thoughts. That's where the work came in. There
Uh-huh.
wasn't all these good thoughts to pull from. I could see this garden across the street that had all this beauty in it, but I was standing in the dump and I could cross over to the street and I could dip my nose and smell a flower, but I couldn't stay over there. I would like wake up and I would still be in the dump emotionally. And I'm like, how come I can see this garden and experience and know that there's this happiness, but I'm unconsciously at the dump? If I know that's the better place, why am I here? Why am I here? And I wanted to get to the root of that question. And that was my alcoholism. Like, what's facilitating my suffering? What's making me choose alcohol? What's making me choose the food? What's making me choose the dump? What's making me choose this darkness? What's making me choose this unhappiness when I have no reason to, because I've lost this weight. I'm not drinking. I have a family. I have a wife. I have a house. I have a kids. I have a job. All these things that we define as success, I have, but I don't feel. And so Dr. Joe started, I was like, well, I'm thinking about my misery. So let me place these things that are good that are in front of me. Well, it wasn't that easy. And it's still a journey. I do it every day. I have to program myself with the version of myself I want to be. And if I don't do that on a daily basis, the old self and the environment will take over.
So
And
true.
and I've just stayed committed. I've gotten to know that higher self longer now than I've been to the victim self. And thanks to my friend Trish as well, that's helped me stay connected and see that reflected back at me. Has been, you start to have new experiences. You start to have manifests. You start to create record labels, those dreams that are once thoughts, right? Those good thoughts you are now manifesting, and you're now walking in your garden because you put some seeds to grow, right? You started watering them with, like, what does that, like, if I got Kenny and Kirk in a room, what does that look like? Like, well, Kirk's busy with Crowbar and Down, and Kenny's working with Silvertune, and Johnny's in Quiet Riot, and Todd's in Dallas. So, like, I guess I would have to see, like, when anyone's available. And so, hey guys, you remember when I told you, like, wouldn't it be cool if you did that band when we all sharing beer? What if we did it? And they're like, yeah, cool, like, great.
Let's do it.
And I'm like, now what? Okay, this is the universe going, okay, you put the idea out there. Here it is, and so I bought plane tickets for everybody. I got a studio from a friend that I used to work with in the industry, that was a producer and a touring musician. And so I knew it would be an environment that all the guys would respect, and working with somebody that wasn't me just like, you know, putting them at the local studio, with this guy named Jerry. They're like, what? No, we're professionals. This isn't going to work out for us. So I started investing in myself, and I started investing in my dreams,
I
and
think that's the magic right there.
I
You did the
started
work.
trusting, and I
Yeah.
started trusting, and when I went into this work, it took me about 8 days into discovering, Dr. Joe, that I was supposed to meditate. I didn't even know what meditation was. I knew that it was something that monks did, and it involved in being still and quiet. That was all my awareness at the time, was what meditation was. And it was something I was not interested in doing. I also knew that. I knew that maybe there's something else I could do other than meditate, because, like, exercise is cool. I could see results, but I'm going to sit and do nothing and see results. Shit, this is going to be really tough convincing me. This is going to take some work. So, I finally, like, after getting it, spending 8 days with his work of being very logical, of thinking new thoughts and healthy thoughts, I downloaded a meditation, and kind of took his information that I was able to pull out from the videos of, like, hey, you should meditate first thing in the morning, is the best thing before you start your day, before you kick off your bad thoughts. And I was like, well, that makes sense.
Yes.
Before the day turns to shit, put in something good. And like putting in your favorite song before work, something I do all the time. All right, cool. That makes sense. So I could, that related to me. And so I would do these 15-minute guided meditations. The morning one was like maybe 20 minutes. And, it was just real simple. I would just listen to him talk, and I would kind of just focus and listen to him. And then I'd get up, nothing, no big changes in my life other than I was feeling better. I was calmer because I was regulating my nervous system. I was I was downloading the divine. I didn't understand at the time. I'm slowing my brain waves down. And when you slow your brain waves down, there's a process that changes in the body, a biological change. And so I was committing to that biological change on a daily basis. So as I'm digging in and being committed to in my nature, I'm an all or none, which is in an addict's behavior for sure. So I was diving into Dr. Joe, and I was like, well, he has these events, and I was like, what's that alike? And then I saw that I was reading that people were going with cancer and coming out like without cancer. And I'm like, no, that's not true. And I was like, no, I didn't believe that. And like people giving out of wheelchairs. And I was like, if that stuff's happening today, if that shit really goes on, I want to go. I gotta see some, I gotta get me some of that. That sounds like the type of stuff I want to be involved in life. That sounds like a new level human experience.
Yeah, and it's tangible proof that applying a different something can yield the results that you are looking for. And there are people out there that speak to the fact that they have achieved those things to varying degrees. You wanted to kick an addiction, they wanted to heal a disease, or they wanted to become a better version, or they wanted to, I don't know, take their business to the next level. So, to circle back to to the addiction of alcohol, for those listening that are in that same boat, I think that what you just described, Andrew, speaks to why AA typically falls short for so many people. And this is exactly why a lot of times people who are addicted actually stop the behavior, don't change the identity, and continue to have cravings. Because I've seen people follow the rules perfectly but still suffer. And in fact, I had a friend who was addicted to alcohol, attended AA, had her sponsor, and was doing the work and going through the motions, and then she ended up committing suicide. So the inner state never changed, and sobriety without the evolution of the identity always leaves the nervous system seeking, starving. So it's looking for that thing to just give itself that hit to feel safe in the moment. And we just go through these loops. But what you described is that you put in real work, and it is real work, to actually sit with your thoughts or start the day in a different manner so that you can actually regulate.
Uh-oh, I lost you. You froze.
Yourself, and much like what you said, that internally, and then your mind approach the day in a different way, and therefore you kind of train yourself to become a better version, to feel safer so that you can make better decisions, and eventually you heal. And I want to make this known to people because a lot of times we've all been conditioned to want really quick I guess responses from our body, or we want like the fast turnaround time. But it's like those people that are committed to going to the gym for a lifetime. You have to invest in health every day. There are people who go to church every weekend. They have to maintain their relationship with God in whatever manner suits them best. And in the same manner, what you described, it's a lifelong journey that you have to keep working on, and one that gives you back 1,000-fold.
Yes, and to that point, I know, and I'm sorry that when we started this, that I told you I have a healing here in 5 minutes that that I'm gonna hop on to attend. Do you want me to hold space for this conversation like here? It's a 30-minute healing and come back, or do you want me to just text you when I'm finished, and then we continue right back on. What works best for you?
I really wanted you to give your story to people so that they can understand that if they're suffering and that if they're in that space, I'd love to have you back so that we could go through the
I would
nitty
love to.
gritty of
You
the exactly what we can do and the application of it from an experiential perspective that you did. But I wanted people to know what they're likely missing as an educational point, what people should do to stop or do or stop doing in recovery, if you want to call it that, recovery,
sure? Yeah.
and what questions should they ask themselves instead to get the
Mm.
ball rolling in that? Because I've seen this pattern in cancer, in autoimmune, in
Uh-huh.
burnout. People
Yes.
change what they do. They
Great
go to a different,
awareness.
yeah, they go to a different doctor, they take different medications, but
Hmm.
the identity stays the same. They still feel like I have cancer. I'm a cancer patient. So the identity remains identical. Therefore, the outcome doesn't change, and the body keeps asking the same questions, just in a different language. So before I let you go, Andrew, I really want to ask these rapid fire questions just from an
Okay.
educational perspective, and then we'll come back to another episode another time, and we're going to go through exactly what you described. So really quickly, tell me one belief about addiction, and one word answers are perfect. One belief about addiction that you no longer hold.
Answer.
Answer. One moment you knew drinking no longer has power over you.
When I learned to love myself.
When love stepped in. The most misunderstood part of recovery.
That it's hard.
What regulation feels like for you now?
Peace.
Peace. Oh, I
Freedom.
love that so much. Free and peaceful. One habit that you started that replaced alcohol.
Meditation.
Meditation. I knew you'd say that. What identity did you have to let die on your journey?
That I was an alcoholic and that I was bound to a life of suffering.
I love that. I love that. That's why I tell people don't ever attach I am to a label, ever, ever, ever. You are
Yeah.
divine. That's about it. What does freedom feel like in the body?
Bliss.
Bliss.
Bliss. Yeah.
What's one thing people overcomplicate when it comes to addiction?
Time.
Time. What's one thing they underestimate?
Time.
Time. What does healed actually mean when it comes to addiction?
Freedom.
Freedom. My friend, thank you so much. I really love that. Just quickly, before I let you go, where can people find your work so that they can actually take a taste of it?
Yes. CorpsePaintRecords.com is the label. The band is SunDon'tShineBand.com or Sun Don't Shine Band. On all the socials, you'll find them there. So I really appreciate it, and I'll send you a message when I'm done with my healing, and I'll be glad to, you let me know when's good for you.
Yes, absolutely. And if addiction isn't a moral failure, my friends, if it isn't a lack of willpower, if it isn't even about substances, but instead a nervous system adaptation to identity and environment, recovery isn't about stopping something. It's about becoming someone, much like how Andrew became someone else. So if this conversation expanded how you think about addiction, recovery, or healing, share it with someone who needs a new lens. This is Health Confidential, and we will talk to Andrew again so he could walk us through the process he used. Thank you so much for being on the show, Andrew.
Thank you so much. I'll talk
Much
to you
love to
soon.
you. Happy healing.
Love you.
Love
Bye.
you too. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining me on Health Confidential, where healing is more than just symptom relief. It's a return to the body's original blueprint, guided by truth, intuition, and cellular intelligence. If today's episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And follow me on Instagram at simone.gisondi for daily insights, behind the scenes wisdom, and holistic inspiration. To explore working with me and to get your own custom made healing protocol, visit simonegisondi.com and book your private consultation to start working together. Remember, your body is sacred, your intuition is gold, and healing is your birthright. I'm Simone Gisondi, and this has been Health Confidential. See you in the next episode.